The Central Intelligence Agency was formed on September 18, 1947, through the National Security Act, which was signed into law by President Harry S. Truman. The agency was formed as a successor to the Office of Strategic Services (OSS), which was the United States intelligence agency during World War II. The CIA was created to serve as the primary intelligence gathering agency for the U.S. government and to coordinate intelligence activities abroad. One of the first things they pound into you during training is always to call the agency the company. Never the CIA or the agency, even among yourselves. The funny thing is that the abbreviation for company in Spanish is CIA.
The company. It has been responsible for many operations over the years, but we want to focus on one in particular, Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird is an alleged large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency that began in the early years of the Cold War and attempted to manipulate domestic American news media organizations for propaganda purposes. It's important to know that media refers to communication channels or platforms used to transmit information, news, entertainment, and other content to a large audience. The term encompasses various forms of communication, including print, broadcast, and digital formats. Media plays a crucial role in shaping public opinion, disseminating information, and facilitating communication in society. Examples of media include newspapers, television, radio, magazines, websites, social media platforms, and mobile apps. Media can serve different purposes, such as informing, educating, entertaining, and persuading audiences, and it can take many different forms, including journalism, advertising, film, literature, and social networking. Kind of scary if it's true.
But it is.
In 1976, there was a congressional inquiry named the Church Inquiry. The Church Committee stated that it found 50 journalists who had official but secret relationships with the CIA. In 1977, Rolling Stone magazine reporter Carl Bernstein followed up on the Church Committee's report and wrote that more than 400 U.S. press members had secretly carried out assignments for the CIA, including New York Times publisher Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, columnist and political analyst Stuart Alsop, and Time magazine.
So that is a brief background and history and brings us to today. While we will flash back to important information in previous years, I wanted you to understand some of the important history. What about the Church Committee's findings? The Church Committee's findings led to significant reforms in the intelligence community and the passage of several pieces of legislation aimed at increasing oversight and accountability, including the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, known as FISA, and the establishment of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. With these safeguards in place, how could there possibly be any influence projected?
The Smith-Mundt Act, formerly known as the U.S. Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, is a United States federal law that governs the dissemination of information and propaganda produced by the United States government for foreign audiences. The original version of the Smith-Mundt Act included provisions that prohibited the domestic dissemination of information and propaganda intended for foreign audiences. This was intended to prevent the U.S. government from engaging in propaganda or psychological operations targeting American citizens. In 2012, the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012 was passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year 2013. This amendment repealed the domestic dissemination ban, allowing the U.S. government to more freely distribute information and materials produced for foreign audiences within the United States. Has it changed? It would appear so. Most notable would be calling cities on fire peaceful protests, the Russian collusion story of Donald Trump, and the Hunter Biden laptop story, where 51 former intelligence officials signed an open letter expressing concern about the spread of disinformation and foreign influence operations. Let's not forget the Bubba Wallace noose hate crime.
Let's take an example and explain how it all fits together.
Hunter Biden's laptop was found to contain information that was incriminating. Immediately, it was rebuffed as a Russian disinformation operation. All news stations receive the talking points from the 6 corporations that own the news. It will be handled as a Russian disinformation. This is repeated over and over on the news. Next, 51 previous intelligence officers signed a letter to the same effect. On social media, posts claiming otherwise were removed or labeled as misinformation. This is how brainwashing happens. A lie is repeated over and over again from multiple sources. Any place you search turns up the same answer, the one that they want you to believe, even though it's not correct. This is how the wrong answer becomes believable. And this has happened a lot more than once.
What is Five Eyes?
The Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance comprising 5 English-speaking countries: the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. They use each other to spy on one another. The Five Eyes countries cooperate closely on matters of national security, sharing intelligence information, technology, and expertise to support their respective defense and counterintelligence efforts. In some cases, surveillance activities conducted by Five Eyes agencies have been criticized for circumventing legal protections, such as warrants or judicial oversight, and for potentially infringing on individual privacy rights. Additionally, revelations about mass surveillance programs, such as those exposed by Edward Snowden in 2013, have raised questions about the transparency, accountability, and proportionality of intelligence gathering activities. This system basically uses another partner to spy on you so you have no rights against it. Favors are called in among the nations involved to spy and report back to the home nation. I guess you can see how this might be concerning. In other words, it basically turns the world of spying and personal rights into the Wild West.
ESG. What's that?
ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. It refers to a set of criteria used by investors and companies to evaluate a company's sustainability and ethical impact. Environmental. This aspect focuses on how a company's operations impact the environment. It includes factors such as carbon emissions, waste management, and energy efficiency, along with natural resource conservation. Social. This aspect considers how a company interacts with society, including its employees, customers, communities, and broader societal issues. Social factors may include labor practices, diversity and inclusion, human rights, community engagement, and product safety. Governance. Governance refers to the systems and structures in place to oversee a company's operations and ensure accountability, transparency, and ethical behavior. Governance factors may include board diversity, executive compensation, shareholder rights, anti-corruption policies, and adherence to ethical standards.
So why does it matter?
Poor ratings mean poor stock performance. Basically, there have been concerns raised about the potential for ESG ratings to be manipulated or misused, including for purposes of influence or coercion. This is perhaps a reason for a company to push for a carbon credit system, or even push for social ethics outside of the normal into the odd or unusual. Influence the company could influence a population. Big banks are the judges to the score rating a company gets. I would hope you are seeing how it is becoming easier and easier to get a task done from the government in an indirect method without infringing on rights. These workarounds are in place in many areas.
And lastly, sponsorships.
News media sponsorships refer to financial arrangements between news organizations and external entities, such as corporations, nonprofit organizations, or government agencies, in which the sponsor provides funding or resources to support specific news coverage, programs, or initiatives. News media sponsorships can raise ethical concerns related to journalistic independence, integrity, and transparency. While sponsorships can provide vital financial support for news organizations, there is a risk that they may influence editorial decisions, coverage priorities, or the framing of news stories to align with the interests of sponsors.
While we have not provided earth-shattering information here, we hope that you can follow a hypothetical example.
In a presidential race with 2 candidates, one wants to get one up on the other. Using high friends in high places, the candidate calls in a favor to one of their friends in the Five Eyes to get some dirt on the other candidate. Trouble is, there's none to be found. So the Five Eyes operative fabricates the story and passes it off to the intelligence. The U.S. intelligence operative takes the information to the FISA court. This allows them to get a warrant to spy on the candidate. At the same time, friends who work in media are notified, and media starts pushing the stories non-stop on the networks, even bringing in speakers to justify the allegations. Almost 24/7, all that is talked about on these news channels are these allegations. These allegations make it to be posts on social media, along with differing opinions. Social media companies get notified that a foreign country has and is interfering in an election with the candidate. Posts that are counter to the allegation get labeled as false information and either taken down or have warnings put on them. Special counsels are tasked with investigating the candidate because the candidate won the election.
The rest of this real story can be read in the John Durham Special Counsel Report.